I don't think that's the limits of Tin Can. I think
Yeah.
it's something that's been thought of, but I think that me believing that is different than them like actually explaining it out. Kind of like going through like, okay, this is what will have to be done. This is what you're going to have to build, but this is what was already kind of like built for you or kind of thought out for you, and this is how you'd implement it. So
Yeah.
there will have to be more case studies, more like hands-on examples of, okay, we've taken this content and these activities, and then we've created like triggers for them, and this is how they would get recorded, and this is how it would like then be shared with other systems. Wait, there's a great cartoon. There's a Tin Can cartoon that actually
Really?
demonstrates a real world. I'm going to pull it up for you guys.
Pull it up. Show
I
us,
use
because it seems like
You
this
guys
is
are my
it's a big, it's a shift into user generated. It's not user generated content, but user generated check-ins, right? Just like the Foursquare thing. So people are going to have to consciously go in there and say, I have done this, I have done X. And they have to decide what contributes to their learning experience, right? They have to decide that. So that the challenge would be to generate adoption for people trying to use Tin Can APIs, the Tin Can API for their learning experiences. And a lot of times when people are not prescribed something, so here it is, you have passed quiz A, quiz B, you've seen video X, now go and do three things on your own and register that by clicking yes, I have done this X. If you don't do that, I worry about the adoption, if people are really going to adopt that. Or offer random prizes or whatever it is for people to go and voluntarily check. I read this Wikipedia article about topic X, which
Yeah.
we're discussing in class.
Yeah, I think the optimal usage is that it's already built into the possible selections that they might make. So, for example, I have a thing called Pocket, or I use Pocket to get all of my to hold all of my the things I like on the web. So in order to do that, I actually have like a plugin on my browser that actually tracks, if if I click the button and say, hey, this is something I want to go ahead and snag, I can do that. I think it would have to be like that. I think it wouldn't be, you'd have to design it such that you wouldn't like be, going to do something and be like, oh man, I have to go back to some sort of, interface or some sort of structure and then enter this information. Because again, you can already do that with like, Cornerstone, for example. You could do that with, or any LMS at this point. I think it would have to be a situation where you're out there serendipitously on the web. You're like, I'm learning stuff. You have to be in the mind of doing that. And then you have to have a way of like, all right, I really need to I want to make note of the fact that I've been reading this or doing this, and actually, because this actually, or someone else says, make sure you have this on here. Go ahead to the site and do that, and then make sure you click it so that you do. So it would be something in that vein, but I think we're probably getting away from the topic at hand, because I feel like we should actually have a conversation about Tin Can that doesn't involve any experts. So like I think we're having that right now.
Yes, I do too. Because that's all the conversations I've been involved in have involved experts and people who've been so wedded to it for years.
Yeah.
It's hard for them to step outside they've got so much vested in it, and I certainly respect that. I want to tell Enzo that the link he sent out the other day for the Hangout
Oh,
says it's over.
Yeah, you know what happened?
Yeah.
I thought that was last week. I was looking forward so much to meeting you guys, and then I thought it was last week.
Yeah, so I'm just telling you, if people are clicking on that, it says that they missed the party. So you might need to send out something again.
Yeah, I sent out a message. Let me click here again.
Because sometimes I wonder about these prearranged hangouts, and they're supposed to have another one tonight.
Oh, really? Yeah, I've never been able to pull one off without a hitch of some sort.
There's always something wrong.
Ad hoc is
Yeah,
fine.
actually, that's not true. The one way I do it is I do a weekly hangout with a friend of mine to talk about writing, And what we do is we use the trigger inside of Google Calendar for because we have it done every.
Right, right. If you're using Google Calendar, you can make it work. Yeah.
Right, but what I do is I just go. One of us goes in there first, and the other one like basically invites the other one. But that's not really the same thing as having like an actual event.
Right, right,
Yeah,
right.
exactly. So I know people do it. I'm not there yet, so we'll figure it out.
Yeah, the
We
event
have
should
more
be
people.
tied to the Hangout. You start an event, the Hangout starts right away. It's weird. The interface is not right there. The UX, not just the UI.
Yeah,
The UX is not
right.
right.
But the user experience
And,
is kind of.
and I'm not
All right, so
bad with technology. I'm okay with it, so I can figure things out. I just
I
weird.
and so I would hope so. Yes.
Yeah, I'm horrible.
So okay, we got 5 people here, 4 people, and David's forehead in the shot here.
I'm not sure that counts.
Which is a nice forehead, by the way. I really like the forehead.
So yeah, very good. I think we should start, and given the interest in Tin Can, we should talk about it next time, not next week, maybe in 2 weeks or so.
Yeah.
Especially next week in the U.S. Holidays coming and all that,
Is that next week?
isn't it? I thought it was.
Fourth
I
of
think.
July, man. Fourth of July.
Yeah, it is.
It's gonna be
Remember out where it's happening too.
another short week.
Yeah. So I wanted to I'm not sure I wanted to do this anymore if it was Craig that suggested it, but anyway, the game topic would be interesting because there's some things in game design that for education or applying games in education that has bothered me for a while, which is the serious game name. I've always struggled with that a little bit. A lot of what drives people to games is not just, but a lot of it is the fun factor. And by the time you call it serious, I don't want to play it. And so
Well, you feel like at that point it's like when you know I don't know, somebody's cloaking something that's good for you in the guise of something that is attractive, which is, I don't know, like candy coated Tylenol. I don't know.
exactly.
It's not you're in for a bad time.
Yeah, it's the lipstick on the pig, right? It's like the whole gamification
Yes.
thing done wrong. Gamification can be done right, but that's another topic anyway. Gamification is not a game, but it's applying game design principles to something that sucks. It's gonna suck, but it's gonna be a little bit prettier, probably.
Yes.
So, I guess my first question that I thought here, and please feel free to chime in. This is an open mic anyway. I'm not leading anything. If anything, Craig is the one that takes the mic every time.
No, yeah, I just talk the most. I don't know if that's leading. That's just talking a lot.
You do.
So,
You do talk, but it's good stuff, good contribution. So I was wondering, when. Well, first of all, have you guys designed any games for learning? That being video games, board games, whatever it is. When was the last time? How was it received? What was it for? What was the design behind it? How did you guys? I'm gonna do a game because just doing a game to make it pretty is not a good idea, right? Just like doing it learning to make IoT prettier doesn't work.
right. Well, all my experiences in it have been they've not been in e-learning. Actually, I have yet to actually create what I would consider to be a game in e-learning. It's all been in live events where it's usually role-playing situations where I've weighted certain actions with reward. And then basically advancing the a good example of something I've done is actually creating a situation where you would something akin to a model United Nations. We have to learn about learn about the value of certain behaviors. I've set up a negotiation between 3 nations. The nations are entirely fictitious. Basically there are different in the situation I set up, there were 4 different types of roles that you could play as part of a nation. So you'd be an ambassador, you would be a spy, you'd be a diplomat, and you'd be a general. And basically, you'd be trying to advance the goals of your nation while also making sure that your part of the organization that you're or country you're working for was actually represented properly by your role. So basically, what it was supposed to do was show that that people in the workplace, while they are advancing the goals of their organization, do spend a lot of time advancing the goals of their particular role, and it kind of to show that happening, without saying like you engineers or you designers, you suck, because that just starts a war. Which in my game happens inevitably. War almost always happens because people can't step away from their personal concerns, which was the point of the game. Um, so that kind of thing worked great. Live, I have not created anything. Um, how do you say? I've not created anything for e-learning or whatever we're calling what we do now. But I've thought a lot about it, and part of my problem with it is I think Enzo is what you said earlier, which is I think when they created the term serious learning, and Kay, you I hate to say it like this. I hate to say it like this. Kay, you'll remember. No, but I hate to say no, but
You
Kay
said
is
serious learning. Now,
yeah,
I hope all learning is serious.
but Kay is a Washington contract insider enough that she remembers, I believe, the times I'm sure you've been in meetings where people have brought up, where the idea of gaming was being brought up, and serious was the cloak to make sure you could actually even bring it into the room. Do you feel like that time has changed? Do you feel like we even need the term serious anymore when we're talking about gaming, or
Well, I'm still hearing the term, we want some gamification.
oh, well,
If
that's
I, when you're talking to a client and that's what they say that, you have to bite your tongue,
hmm,
um, because that's what they've been reading. That's what they've been reading all about, and that's the term they're going to use. And I can't. It's just as being somebody who it was involved. When I say involved, aware this years ago when it first became talked about in our industry.
hmm.
Um, that makes me cringe, kind of like Chris Rock. Oh God, just oh, don't say that word.
No.
But I have to give their clients, so you have to kind of get into it. But honestly, the times I've heard it, that they haven't lately. Serious hasn't been attached with it. Um, I think maybe it's gotten enough roadshow play that people presume that if it's a part of learning, it should actually enhance the learning experience, and not be something that's just thrown in there. I mean, Craig, I don't know how long you've been in ID, but I was in ID when Jeopardy games were first started.
Yeah, yeah.
Wow.
Well, well, when they were first started, let me back up. I don't know about that, but yeah.
Wow.
I was around when the first Jeopardy games were put in an e-learning course. So
and we're still trying to get them out.
get them out.
Yeah,
Go away. That
yeah.
is not true gaming, and that's not what they mean when we talk about gaming.
That
So
speaks that I think that speaks to sometimes I don't know if it's the speed that the learning organizations normally move at in especially in corporate environment, but a lot of times we're and guilty here. We're lazy to think. Oh, it would be fun. We need to make this fun. It's too dense. It's too much information, too much technical information. How can I make it fun? Ooh, that Jeopardy template on PowerPoint. And that's a game. There are times where it's fun to do a little game show and all that kind of stuff. But we tend to go the lazy or the quick route on when we think games for learning, right? We'll just make this quiz more fun and add a little game at the end of it.
Right.
If anything, it might just bore the student even more, depending on what types of games.
I think one of the important things about games is also that it depends on what model you're using. For instance, take Keller and also other principles in which debriefing and briefing are main parts. Then you will often find that the interaction between what you actually do in your life, in practice, and in combination with what happens in the game, adds to the actual learning effect. Someone asked about the transfer. And often you will find in research that the transfer is enhanced due to the fact that you have some sort of debriefing outside the game. It's a bit
Right.
like playing a normal game. When you talk about tweaks or cheat codes and things like this, the same
Hmm.
happens in games. I've seen this oftentimes when I did user research and learning research in regard to games, especially mobile games and geolocation-based games. And you often see this effect that that doing something together, the collaborative part of it adds to the learning effect.
Right.
So it can be a good thing, but I fully agree that the term serious is really odd. I mean,
Yeah.
it's just adding a game or a drop-down menu or dropping something drag and drop system doesn't make it a game. And I
Right.
think in just if you want to make a good game and make it educational, it takes more than just putting an education list together and in a game developer and you get an educational game. That's probably how in most cases it happens.
Oh,
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
is
No, they get them in a room and they're like, "All right, I know some things. What do you think we should do with it?" And I'm pretty sure that's how it goes down.
that's a
Yeah.
great point. You know, it's with it comes with your reflection point right there. If anything that we're trying to do with our learners, or any good designer is trying to do with their learners or instructor, is create or help them change their view of the world, or try to reflect on something that they do now and that they want to do differently, learn a new skill or something like that. And without that reflection at the end, that debriefing, you may lose a lot of the value. So if it's just a game for fun's sake, for the game's sake, then I think it might lose a lot of the learning power that he has. When I was I think I was doing my master's, and a professor had us play World of Warcraft. So not a serious game at all, right? It was a fun thing to do, but not just playing the game. We were supposed to pay attention to how the gameplay was designed, what we learned with every time we went on a quest, what the main points were. So I think this takes us back to the game as a reflection device, right? And the innate characteristics of a game. It's based on goals. It has to have a story, right? To be engaging, it needs a story of some sort, and we tend to forget that and just make it a boring game, not a board game, when we're designing for learning.
I think oftentimes I remember I did developed a game for AkzoNobel, which is a chemical company in the Netherlands, and we did an experimental study to check whether there was any learning effects if we compared the normal learning situation to just doing the game. And what they had to do in the game was, had to do with protocols concerning security, just where do you place certain objects which are, you need to place in a certain area according to protocols, and so things like that. And what actually happened when we did the study, and later on that turned out to be the conclusion that the game led to better transfer, and the people actually did it the way the protocol said it had to be done. And otherwise you had to sit in a room. They gave you this paper, you learned it by heart, and nothing happened. So the fact that you played a game with other people and thought about it, had to use it in practice while working, enhanced the learning effect. So it can be a good thing, I think. But I think it also depends, and that's the other point that I think is important, that there are many learning theories which are not known to educationalists. Because Kelly is one of those, but you also have other learning theories which are mainly having to do with learning math and things like this. And most educationalists do not know these theories. And if you look at those theories, they can be very helpful when developing an educational game, while they actually are many times they are used in games. And there's also a third point, and that has to do with narration. Is there's perhaps you may have heard from Mark Meadows. He has written a lot of books about how a game progresses, so the structure of the game. And one of the things is that research has shown that when you have a game which is more like an adventure, so the target the intermittent states and the finite goal is reached from different target points, then the learning or the transfer is enhanced. So you see the structure of the game is actually very important. So it doesn't have to be this simple structure which educationalists have. You have go from point A to B.
Right.
There's some few points in between, but you take one A1, A2, A3, A4, so on, and then go to B, which
Right.
enhances the actual learning effect. And
So then
also gives yeah.
No. Actually, I don't want to interrupt you. I was
Oh,
just.
I just want to say you can also facilitate the different learning styles, which is very good.
No. What it sounds like though, what you're saying is that there needs to be a deeper, like the levels of the experience need to be deeper before you can advance to something, and then that deep experience planning, is necessary in order to kind of hit the learning objectives that you're looking for.
In a way, but that's one way of looking at it. It all depends on what you want to learn. But it can also be you can progress through the game in your own in your own speed in that way. So if you have some prior knowledge, then coming from point A1 to
Right.
B and so on and so forth takes less time. So in actual reality, it helps. It creates an individual learning path. At the same time, you can still have the fun with all the other players.
Right.
So the diversity within the game is much it provides more flexibility for the learning.
Now, in when oftentimes when the subject of serious or educational games comes up, the question of assessment of performance and of basically assessing the level of learning that comes up. And I've had this come up a bunch of times. And now, as I've not actually done the kind of development, in the things that I've designed for live role play, the result is sort of self-evident, although we do require reflection to kind of get it. In the I guess e-learning game or the digital and social gaming sphere, how might one assess the success of I guess of learning transfer in such an environment?
I think there are certain ways. It all depends on what kind of game you're playing. If I take, for instance, a social game, at one time I developed a game for learners who could not be at school, or they had behavioral difficulties. And what we did was we created some sort of environment in the game itself, where they had to interact with one another. And on the basis of what they said, how they interacted with one another, and we could score them, and that was a way of doing it. Otherwise, you could also do one way, which I often use, is you could use problems and quizzes. Take for instance the math and language problems, which I often used. Performance assessments are one of the things which are often used, and especially I think one of the favorites is probably the drag and drop. I think there was something on the left, something on the right,
Right.
sort of kind of a memory game. Yeah, I think those are mostly used.
Yeah, that does seem to be the case. I was reading something the other day that was talking about whether it was good or bad to have leaderboards in games where you have a bunch of participants, like whether it was good to have the veneer of competition or show people who are doing really well, and then kind of have people kind of track against each other. I'm not sure. I'm still kind of undecided. My feeling, or if someone like kind of forced me to answer, I'd probably say that it depends on what your goal is for the course, or for the experience. If you want people to, if you're trying to get people to kind of support each other towards getting better scores, and because better scores translate into something, maybe yes. But I think a lot of people have leaderboards and kind of even the concept of scoring. As what they consider to be a necessary remnant of gaming, but that's not always true.
I think if you don't, yeah.
Good. I was going to say that my opinion is, and this is my personal opinion, right? If the being at the top is something attainable within the game, it's not something impossible to achieve, then it's a good thing.
Hmm.
But if you are designing your game so that only one or two people will be at the top and the others will look and be completely unmotivated to try to move on within the game, then I think you're doing a disservice to the majority, unless your goal is to teach two or three people. So I think it's a mix
I
between
think, yeah.
goal and expectations and ability to achieve, right? You want to push them just a little bit, but not too much, right? So, and we need some scaffolding and all that kind of stuff in there. So that relates to the theory of
But if
learning
it,
design
yeah,
and
yeah,
all, instructional design and all that kind
yeah.
of stuff too. You're not going to design something impossible. You want to teach something that's challenging but not overwhelming.
I think you can also, if you look at the games, they often have you're measured on different levels or different aspects. I think in educational games and even social games, you will find this that they test you on different things. So you can be a leader in, say, for instance, well, how you treat one another, or certain attitudes, whereas in skills you might be lower. So this differentiation within the testing can be quite useful.
Mm-hmm.
Well, especially if you take a quite advanced educational game, a good educational game, it will provide this variety of testing, which is quite different from the educational testing, which tends to focus on one or two aspects in one way. And I think the fact that games can add by testing multiply and using different methods, that allows for a certain competition, but at the same time you don't have to be competitive, because you can also play the game for fun and just be a student without knowing whether the other one scored an 8 or a 9 or whatever. You don't have to, if you don't want to know, you don't know.
Yeah.
It's
Right.
optional.
I feel like, we before we started the hangout, I guess in officially, we were talking a little bit about the Tin Can API, Experience API, whatever we're calling it, and its ability to kind of report back to a learning record store like all sorts of information, all sorts of data. I've always felt like games are a ripe opportunity to have like different interaction points, for the user to try this out or make these decisions, or express this value over another, and then capture that information and then throw it back, combine it with other things, and possibly make a judgment that could be then fed back to the user to give an assessment of their performance at a very at a sophisticated level, or kind of just stored and then you could be interpreted later. I don't. Do you guys have any examples of that, or of like where games are used to kind of test different aspects of a?
I think I have an example, because
Oh, okay, good.
I designed a game for the Navy, and it was especially for the fire department within the Navy. So what they had to learn was, when you have a fire on a flagship, I think it's probably called, you can't practice in reality. So you simulate it in a way, and what we then test, if the person has a certain role, then we can test leadership, flexibility, and things like this. And based on the scores, which are mostly sometimes time sequence based or different things, you create a profile using advanced statistics techniques like a multi-level structural equation modeling and response theory, and then you can build a profile from someone. And what we did in this game was we used that profile, and every time they played the game, we could check whether he had made some advancements on certain level, and then check whether he progressed through the game. Also on the different roles, so you could be a leader or someone who checks the hoses or whatever, depending on the kind of role you had. So it is possible to use this, what they call PMS in assessment. So it's pupil monitoring systems, which is, well, they often use this in more advanced games.
And on a practical level, how, if you don't mind sharing, if it's not proprietary, what are the tools that you and your team normally use to design games and simulations?
Well, we yeah, we mostly build the engines ourselves.
Wow.
At least when we use, when we when I'm talking about the game we developed for the Navy. Uh, I was not one of the developers, but I could have been. I know about the computer science, but I was just in charge of the level designs and the story and the testing, and I know others just designed the engine. I mean, I merely did the testing, so I did all the statistics and the artificial intelligence bits, zeg to put it like that, and but we designed it. And but there are engines available, but you have to check what kind of engine you need in regard to what you want, because uh, certain engines have well are not applicable in every situation.
Yeah.
Right,
So
right.
there are things available, but the one I would have to say that it does take a lot of technical skill to build an engine, and you need expertise to do so,
And I was
Right.
and it's
Well,
not easy.
and I was I totally believe you. I was involved in the back in Sun Microsystems. I was involved in some Second Life simulations Second Life is not per se a game, but we made games inside Second Life in the sense of building scavenger hunts and things like that, having goals attached to whatever you're doing in that environment. So we turned it into mini games inside Second Life. And that was a cheap, as in free, way to design some form of a social game in there for purposes of learning within an environment that already exists. Since then, Second Life pretty much fell off the face of the earth with a lot of spam, and nothing came to replace it. Right? So we are at a loss pretty much. If we by we I mean in general, people trying to design learning experiences within existing platforms. So if you guys know of any new platforms coming out there, like you just said, Minecraft could be an interesting way to design something educational there. Let's share in
yeah,
chat
I
after
mean,
this.
there's all sorts of people doing stuff. Oh, the video I posted in the group chat there. By the way, if you're not watching the PBS Idea channel on YouTube, you're missing one of the best one of the best, at least in my opinion, educational
Yeah.
YouTube, specifically for YouTube produced video series
PBS?
out there. Yeah, it's kind of sponsored by PBS, I guess. But there's like four guys who do this Idea channel, YouTube channel, and it's just good stuff. Like they're short, and when I say short, they're like 5 to 11 minute at most mediations on a particular topic, and the topics are based around a particular idea. A lot of times they're around things that involve education, because it is PBS. And a lot of times it's culture stuff. But we could do that another time. In fact, video, YouTube and video for an educational purposes could be an entirely other discussion. So Minecraft in particular is kind of it's one of those things that's really becoming popular, especially in the secondary schools, at least in the United States, to teach different subjects. There's a lot of different ways you can teach things using Minecraft. But in terms of platforms, I feel like Second Life. One of the problems with Second Life is that everyone was focused on the what was happening, or in terms of what it looked like, the kind of the idea of what we were supposed to be shooting for, and we're forgetting about the actual gameplay. So and I know this is something I brought up last week, but if you go to, and I'm going to go ahead and copy it into the chat here, arisgames.org. Aris is a development platform for creating mobile games. Mostly. Oh, it looks like just for iOS right now, not for Android. But it's really cool. But one of the things that actually emphasizes, or kind of makes you emphasize, is actually the gameplay aspect. Like, what are you trying to, like, you have to sit back and design more. So again, everyone was so stoked about Second Life because it provided this big container in which you could make things happen. But the real fact of the matter is, people really aren't that motivated to make certain things happen. It's hard to design. It's hard to think 5 steps ahead of your users and then figure out the problems before they come up. I think we're at a point right now in history where we have the technology. Like, when I say we, I mean, Kay has the technology. She can make this happen on her own right now. She could make a serious game. She could plan it out. It's just limited by the power of Kay's mind, at this point. So Um, no, that's a good thing. That's a good thing. The world is counting on your mind, Kay.
No
Yeah,
pressure.
No pressure.
no pressure.
But it's right now it's a matter of we can design it, but like I think we kind of have to step back and think about like what do we want to happen? Like, what are the values expressed? Like what's the point of the game? Here's a question I want to ask you, David, actually. It's something I've been wondering about is does the fidelity of the game, and I mean this kind of goes back to Second Life because we were like, oh, it looks kind of like the classroom or whatever, the place you're working. Like, okay, that might be fine. Is there any research that indicates that the fidelity, like graphic or situational fidelity, has an effect on people's ability to learn better from being involved in the game, right?
I think the difficult thing, I know that there has been done, some research has been done on this,
Mm-hmm.
and that there's a really big differential effect because I think when people are used to games, then the higher the fidelity gets, then the effect of learning is larger.
Hmm.
If so, they want more, well, bigger, better graphics and things like this.
Right.
But most people, I think, just want, well, a bit low graphics because they want more interaction. They want more. The metrics is very important. Interaction is important, and just like which is also known in learning networks, for instance. The sense of belonging and the sense of well, togetherness, being in a group and feeling part of this group. I think this is a really important part for even the social games, and also in the activity games and adventure games. You see this in the role-playing games. You see the same tendency.
So things like World of Warcraft are really popular because they emphasize like group activity,
In a way,
community
yeah.
action.
Just a simple thing like when someone plays a game, he talks about it in a subway. Well, did you check out that cheat code? That creates
Right.
a certain, well, group feeling, sense of
Right.
being together, chatting to each other outside the game. Just contacting each other. Well, I'm going to start at 12. Just simple things like this can add to the enjoyment and also the learning effect in that sense.
So are you talking?
Well, I have a
Craig, are you talking about fidelity in actions that you can make within a game, as he's saying, like outside, going outside the game, talking to somebody else, or fidelity in representing the real world visually? Because that's why I mentioned the Uncanny Valley. There, it's
Right.
I'm not sure you guys heard of it, but it's.
I have. Beverly. I'm gonna attach a link about it. There's a really good one regarding Japanese
Yeah,
robotics.
it's pretty much the Polar Express. Why people got freaked out with Polar
Right.
Express, right? Because it was so real, but not really, that people couldn't quite put their finger on it. So that dip right between
That was it. That was the name of that. Yeah, Polar Express. Yeah, it was like animated corpses. It was really
weird.
creepy.
Yeah, it's great.
Yeah.
Yeah, Tom Hanks. I mean, that just absolutely freaks me out. Yeah. Ooh.
But to answer your question, Enzo, both. I mean, it's actually the graphic fidelity. Like does it look like a for example, in a lot of first-person shooters, they're so careful to get the guns right that actually some gun manufacturers, like Call of Duty, gun manufacturers have actually gotten involved and actually licensed the guns, in their design and make sure that they're done correctly because they want, because the game designers want to make sure that they're having like it feels very real because they feel that that's important.
If for instance, a game like Half-Life or Doom,
Yeah.
then when they started to make the graphic much better, at one time users could see the blood spatters and really real life things. But then at one time, some users indicated from research by I think Ennerström, a Swedish Danish guy, I think, indicated that it was too real actually, too graphic, and it became too real, too graphic, and then I think in a way it wasn't the game anymore.
Right.
Interesting. The other thing, well, so there's that level of reality, like do the buildings in the the town look like they would in
Yeah.
World War II era France. But there's the other, but really, and this is what I think is more important for our purposes, is the situation like proper. So, for example, you could have a game where you're supposed to, one that I started creating before I left my last job, which was creating a series of activities for somebody who was running a motor pool for a diplomatic installation. The things they had to do. Is it important to include the fact that in most motor pools, like the service areas out back, and there but the gas is over on the other side of the compound, so in most cases you're going to have to go over there? Or is it enough to talk about the fact that you need to go to get the gas before you do that? Like, is it necessary to work in like the contours of the actual like office setting, in order for people to really feel like this is for them? Because in my experience, for example, in the example that I was giving you in the very beginning, um, in the real life situation, like I actually went away from the real life situation because I didn't want people to get caught up in the details of like, well, that's not exactly how I do my job. It's like, that's not important. I want you to learn about this and or reflect on this point, or on this dilemma. So,
And in a sense, right, by making it depends on your goal, right? Because by making it less real life like, but still keeping the essence of the goals that you're trying to teach, the objectives, the reflection that you want them to make, you are making it more fun, right? More interesting, more engaging, because
yeah.
you are telling a story instead of just like, we're here at the office again, and you got to click this because that person has a complaint. Click them to see what the complaint is and solve the issue by answering A, B, or C. Then you made it less real life, but the goals are still there in your game. So it's still more an engaging story. So you're telling people a story at the same time as you're teaching them.
What gosh, what is the one? You guys, it's not a game per se, but you guys have heard of Broken Coworker,
No.
right? Hold on a second.
No, no.
All right, hold on. I'm gonna throw that in the.
Another link.
Okay.
This is a good,
I'll have to look at it. Remember the double with.
it's a good one. It was created when Storyline first came out, and actually it's one of the best examples of a use of Storyline I've seen so far. But the idea, like what they were doing, they're kind of leading you through a day. I mean, it was your basic like branching scenario situation. Stuff that is better than a lot of stuff that you'll see. But yeah.
Very nice.
But what I thought was interesting about it is that it you were kind of drawn down. Like it was not drawn down, but it was fairly realistic in terms of like your choices and what might happen as a result. So really, this all comes back to: do we as instructional designers or learning professionals really know how to create the kind of experiences that qualify as games? Because our stakeholders, they hear, as Kay pointed out, our stakeholders hear buzzwords and they're confusing them in the first place. So, it's all we can do not to go like, no, you don't know what you're talking about. Because I mean, that's the first foot in the door. It's like telling them that they're wrong and that everything that it was wrong. But so it's they want gamification. We want to create engaging learning experiences, but we may not have or know like David, for example, seems to have experience actually getting in, or at least being in a team of people who are doing that. I mean, actually, David, maybe you're the person to answer this question.
I think what I've learned from this is that I started in education as an educationalist. Later on, I did computer science and game design, and I think as at that point I saw the difference between, because even when you read about instructional design, principles you learn about and the textbook which are you commonly use never mention things you actually learn when you're doing game design. Not simply the learning theories are different, but motivational theories are different. The whole designing principle is different. Just take, for instance, a simple principle like rapid prototyping. I mean, it could well be used in education, but it's never used because in games, whereas in game design, this oftentimes you will find that this is used. So the whole view of how you develop them, how when something is engaging, is viewed differently. And I think it has to do, perhaps has to do with the fact that game designers come much more from, I think, well, what games are, so the ludology and things like this, and whereas educationalists tend to come from pedagogy and child psychology, development psychology, and these really are really different. So just looking at how someone plays and does something is much more informative.
I'm gonna be honest, right? Here's the deal, and I don't want to offend any instructional designers. I include myself in this. I am one. We tend to get a little mad whenever a subject matter expert, that is an engineer, wants to tell us how to design a course, right? Oh, but this all this information needs to be there, blah, blah, blah. The typical SME relationship, right? But we're quick to jump on my director asked for a game. Sure, I can design it, but I have no experience in designing a game. I have there's tons of specific degrees related to game design, right? And here we are trying to play the role of an instructional designer, a subject matter expert, a game designer, and everything. And we're reluctant to ask for help whenever we need to design something outside of our comfort zone. For example, a game that we're not experienced in designing. We hesitate to ask for budget or for the help of a colleague that does have that experience, etc. Right? So I think it's a little bit of a rant there, but we should also know our limitations instead of trying to design something and doing a disfavor to the field.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. And I feel like there is a definite space for learning. I mean, instructional game designer. I'm not sure, much like, instructional designers, much like, we've come to where we are from a whole bunch of different places. We don't really have like kind of a classic path to get where we are. I think it's going to be the case for learning game designers. Like a lot of them will be people who work for game game corporations and decided to kind of move towards something where they're looking for different outcomes or specific outcomes, right? A lot of them will be people like us who go like, okay, I really need to figure this out. So I just posted in the I should try that, Enzo. Yeah,
That's Sid Meier.
yeah, but Sid Meier, you know that guy. So he he's apparently got a game design boot camp, and he's someone who's spoken at what was it? George Mason University has the Innovations in E-Learning conference every year, except for this year because of the sequester. Yeah, that got everybody. So, but a couple years back, he was one of the keynote speakers, and he was great. They had George or David Romero there a while ago. And anyway, it was just those are different. I agree with you, Enzo. Those are different competencies. I think a lot of us are going to start moving in that direction and specializing, and I think it would be good. Yeah, I should. And what is this?
NASAGA is North America Simulation and Game Association, I think is what it is. Yeah, they have some interesting conferences and stuff like that, and they in articles and publications about game design in the context of learning, right? And I haven't attended one, but I have a friend, Brendan Carson. I think he's part of it too. He's on the board, and he does some stuff with them. And I've heard they do really good conferences and very dynamic workshops and stuff like that.
Isn't it coming up?
It is.
Yeah, like I think you have until the 30th to.
Right. So this is something.
But there are a lot of things NASAGA has to offer. I think there are also other similar associations also having to do with games. And I attended one of them, which and I posted it online on chat. Katie Salen, probably some of you know her, have written a lot about games, rules of games. Is her book, and I think I think it was a very good book to understand how you design a game and really get into the learning part of a game. I think, and even and one of the things which always helped me was the magic circle. Perhaps you may have heard, but was a principle in which they sort of explained how the learning happens within a game, and and this all has to do with the kind of role you have in relation to one another, the social aspect, and really enhancing one another's strong points and qualities, and using one another's intelligence to get to a next state within the learning. And this concept of magic circles, which was described in the book Non Sub-Zero Games. Perhaps someone has read it, which is a very interesting
Oh,
concept. I
nice.
also read it in the chat, so you can
Good.
look it
I'll
up.
explore
Okay,
that.
cool.
That's really cool. I think Craig already posted a link to it there for us. Wow. Well,
Yeah, I did the wiki.
I'm learning so many new
Yeah,
terms here. I'm gonna
yeah,
have to
yeah,
save a
yeah.
transcript and research later.
Yeah.
Yes, we need a copy of this
Well,
transcript.
I'll do what I did last time, and I'll pull if you can pull the chat out or pull the transcript out, Enzo, I'll go ahead and set up the links and then create
Oh,
a
that'd be
Google
great.
Doc and then throw that back into the
I'll do
community.
that. And I think Beverly had a question that went up in chat there and we never addressed it. It was about
Oh, right.
engaging people that are not gamers, the typical gamers.
Yeah.
How do you sell a game to somebody that hates games even?
Well, okay. Actually, Beverly, let me ask you that. Like, who would you? I mean, is there a stereotype for who a non-gamer is? I mean, I'm not sure who that would be.
Yeah, that's true.
Uh,
I guess playing games is so innate in our nature, right? It's everybody plays games. I'm not sure I'm doing an absolute here, but it's
well, right. I mean, would that be somebody who, not, I mean, they obviously, let's say they don't like stuff like Call of Duty or Half-Life or whatever, but they also are not into World of Warcraft. They're not into any of the Facebook games that are out there. They're not into, Yahoo Poker, which my wife is into, and or they're not into and they're not into board games, which I actually like. My dirty little secret is I'm not really into board games, and that's a horrible thing for a learning professional. Like like we're all supposed to be into. But like I feel like that's something that I guess what I'm trying to say, Beverly, is there's a large expanse of what one might call game accessibility or whatever. So I'm not really into it.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure.
Yeah.
No, I think I have more questions than I have opinions at this point. But I do
That's okay.
think that, yeah, I do think there's a lot of people who don't love games, or they like a particular type of game but not another type. Like they might not like online games, but they like board games. So
Right.
when we're building learning experiences, how do you make sure that they're ideal for the learning audience?
Well, I guess I mean I'm probably not the expert here, so I'll go ahead and I'll answer first to get the stupid thing out of the way. I'll say that I'll go ahead and say that it's probably I think one of the problems is getting hung up on the tropes of gaming. You know what I mean? Like, so it feels like it has to be gamey or or game-ish. Like there's a whole bunch of other things going on, much like when you overdo it in e-learning and you have a bunch of things going on that aren't germane to learning anything. I think that happens in games. I think a game can be an engaging experience where you're actually trying to make something happen, or you're trying to try your information against something. I think that's as simple as it has
I
to be.
think people love storytelling and all that, and games are a lot about storytelling and having goals and all that. Having said that, I think many times we're just as designers, as learning designers, we try to aim to please everybody, and well, we can't, right?
Can't do
So
that.
try
Yeah.
that. If your goal after you do some audience analysis, task analysis, etc., all the formal stuff, then try to do a little test and see if people would enjoy the concept of a game. Get a little group together of learners, some a few, just a sample, and see if the concept would work for the majority, and then try to engage the other people in different ways. I mean, when I designed with Brendan and Org an alternate reality game back in '09, I think it was, for a high exec meeting at Sun back in the day, and we had some clear goals. We had a mix of scavenger hunt with storytelling, with discovery, with all kinds of stuff in collaboration with one another, in competition. We had all kinds of different elements that a lot of games have in common in one experience. And I think we pleased most people. If people liked scavenger hunt, they liked that portion of the game. If people liked the story, they liked the narrative. We had some YouTube videos to help tell that narrative, for example. So the game character talking to them in that alternate reality. People that like that kind of stuff enjoyed that portion of the game. So there is a way to, I think, not try to please everybody, but still try to accommodate different styles within the same game. I don't know if I'm just bloviating here.
No, I mean,
Yeah.
it certainly sounds way better than page turners.
Oh, but I have clients who ask for page turners.
Yeah, that's true. No, because they know exactly what they want, and they were like, nope, I just want the next button.
Exactly.
Yep. True.
Yeah, let people pick what they like best in your game. What they make sure the objectives are covered and let them pick, choose their own adventure throughout it.
Well, let's face it. Some people had just as soon read a PDF, and I mean, not a lot of people, and I'm certainly not one of them. But maybe throw that out as an alternative.
Well, yeah. Well, and that brings up a great point.
Sometimes a PDF is
Brings up a great point, right? Many times when we're creating
I think
a course or a game, whatever it is, we're basing it on something that exists. We're not coming up with concepts from scratch. So if we offer, for example, if we're creating a game in Captivate, Starline, whatever it is, and people don't want to play the game, whatever the game is, if the game sucks or whatever to them, in resources, hey, you can also read this PDF, or you can go to this website, or you can watch this YouTube video, all linked within the game, and get the same information. And if it is attached to a certification that has a quiz, whatever it is, you can still get the same information and improve that you learned in a different way outside of the game. So you can offer different options. The PDF is actually a great point.
That does give people a different way to learn the same material.
Right.
Choices.
Some people.
I was hoping this would be a 30-minute discussion, but Craig takes over.
Yeah. But it has to be.
Look at all those links, Enzo. My God, it's too much.
That's what.
Nice.
That's actually a nice example from a game which uses simple things like PDFs and text, which is the Wiki game, which was developed by the Open University in the Netherlands, and it was used to teach students how to logic and learning how to argue, things like this. And it was really simple in essence. It was also called a serious game in a way, but it was still text-based, and it was actually quite effective. And so just the simple things like a PDF or reading a text can be very helpful. And I think in actuality, if you use multiple forms of presenting a certain message, then it can also facilitate those different preferences. Because as Maya has demonstrated years ago in its coding theory, neural coding theory, that when you have multiple channels, you learn from it, but also if you provide information using multiple channels, more people will benefit from it and like it, because we all have some preference in regard to how we want to learn, whether we are more visual or graphical, whatever. So these multiple channels are very important, I think, even within games.
Yeah, perfect. Multiple channels within a game. I'm taking notes.
It's funny, as you're talking, David, I'm actually trying to write down all the things I'm gonna have to look up later. No.
For me too.
No, I will. No, this is the hallmark of an excellent discussion when I have to look stuff up.
We need all this documented. I think we're developing a course here.
See you later, Beverly. See you later, Beverly.
Thanks for coming, Beverly. Nice seeing you again.
Okay, thanks. Invite me back.
We will.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I unfortunately, I actually need to get back to work too. Although yeah.
I think I've been sitting in front of the computer now for 2 hours.
Ouch.
Just listening.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
My brain.
Well, thanks, guys. And so as soon as you pull the log and go ahead and send it over, I guess sometime this weekend, I'll go ahead and make a Google Doc and throw it back into the into the learning design and tech open mic community, so we can get at it.
Thanks for helping with all this, Craig, and thanks for joining us today, Dave, and Kay, and Beverly. Just
Yeah, my pleasure.
great chatting with you guys. And let's write. I'm thinking also on the even more practical note, if you guys happen to remember any new gaming platforms or things like that that are hot, like Minecraft, for example, let's add it to the list there. I'm going to make this as a Google Doc, and Craig's going to polish it up and then add it there. I'll make it anybody with the link can
I will
add it.
send the yeah.
What's that, David?
I will send next time. I will probably send give the URL about Katie Salem, which has a lot of information about learning in games, which is a nice thing. There's a lot of material, videos, example games, and demos, which is good.
Cool.
Yeah.
All right, guys. I'm looking forward to next time.
Bye. Me too.
All right.
Yeah.
Should be soon.
Me too.
All right. All right.
Bye. You too.
Day.